welcome back. Now that we have finished the client-side authentication, we are moving on to the creating income and expenses. So first, let's work on the expenses part of it. So we're going to create an income. Okay. Alright, so the first thing first is what we need to handle the form. So in this video, we have more tasks to achieve. Right, one, we are going to handle the form using formic. And then when we finish, we are going to create our action and reducers, and then we dispatch. Alright, so let's go ahead and then quickly handle the form. So we did this one when we are registering a user. So we're going to be quick one, and I'll move fast here. So if you think I'm moving fast, you can slow me down, or you can go back and watch the process of user registration and login. For that section, I took my time to do it. So until this point, I believe you are confident with it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and then start handling our form. Okay, so the first thing you need to take in mind is that what field do you want to correct, right? We have what? Title, description, and amount. So quickly, let's go to the app. Let me close all these ones from here to have a clean sheet. And let's go to client, SRC, and pages, and expense, and add expense. And then let me open the register one too. Sorry, register also is here, and my expense is here because we are going to do some copy and paste. That is why I'm doing that. So first, in our expense, we need title, and definitely we need what? Use hook. Okay, copy use hook, so use effect. And then let's come to the add expense and then bring it here. Definitely we need YAP for error handling. Let's also bring it here. There we go. Next step is we need to create our validation. Okay, so definitely we need this one. Copy that, and then let's come here and then place it here. So here we don't need email, we don't need password, we don't need last name, but we need what? Title, right? So multi-select title here, and that is it. And title is a string, and next one going to be description, right? So click on that and Command D on Mac, and let's write description. Okay, and the last one going to be the amount. So amount is required. So here going to be sorry, amount is required. So I don't need last name here, but remember, amount is what? Amount is a number, not a string. So we need to validate this one. So here is what? Number, but not a string. Okay, so we are done with that. The next one is we need to create an instance of formic. So here, let's come here, let's initialize our form, right? And remember, this is a formic form. So let's copy this ones from here, the formic one. Yes, and let's come here, and then inside the components, because you are creating an instance. So here we don't need email, so it's what? Title. We don't need password, it's what? Description. We don't need first name, but it's what? Amount. We don't need last name. And for now, we don't have any dispatch action here, so let's remove this one and just console log. Let's console log the values, right? Let's console log the values here. Okay, and pass in our validation schema. All right, so the last thing is what? We need to bind the individual input, right? So let's come back to the form and copy some of the form handling here. So for this input, okay, we need value, we need on change, we need on blur. So let's copy all these ones and come back to add expense. So for the expense form, let's look at the structure. This is our main form and here we can display some error here, and this is our title. This is our first input on line number 52 rather, here, my first input, right? That is about, look at the name, enter title here. So it means that this is my input form. So let me paste it here, And here the value here is not first name but what, last name. So I'll click on that, Command D, multi-select, and I'll change to title. That is it. And for the error handling, it says that error goes here when the user refuses to provide the title. So here we can copy this error handling here, this error handling, error display message here, or div. So let's copy this one, and the only difference is change the input name, and that is it. Alright, so let's, below the line number 61 on my code, let's hit enter and place this one. Alright, so here, like I said, not first name, the field is title, multi-select, and I have my title, and it goes on and on. So now we need the description too. So let's copy this one, and then on the description, as you can see here, we have what, enter description. So it is the input field, right? So let's scroll here and then add here and change the title here to description. So you can pause this video and do it by yourself. All right, and then for the error, we have it's not title but it's what, description. That is it. And then the last one going to be the amount. Here, as you can see here, we have the form enter amount, so we need the same input here, and let's scroll down where we have the amount, this field. All right, and paste it and change the description to amount. All right, and the error display, copy this one, and then where we have the error here, below this error, and then paste it, and then change this one to amount, and that is it. You are done. The last thing is, let's handle the onSubmit. So on the form, let's add onSubmit. For onSubmit, we are going to use the formic. So formic dot handle submit, and that is it. So let's check it out. All right, so this is our form. Yes, there we go. So let's open the console here on the left hand side here. Let me clear this one, and when I click on this and I navigate my mouse out of it, you see that title is required on Blur. When I click on this, navigate around, hey, description is required. I enter, move my mouse, alright, amount is required. So it means that our form validation is working. So let's try to enter something. Title, let me say this one, maybe I guess salary. Okay, you see it's gone. And then description here, this is my, I guess, salary. Alright, and the amount is $5,000 and hit, and there you go. You see we have the form being submitted. But if you refuse to provide any of this field, you cannot send the request. Okay, so perfect. The first step is done. Our form validation is done. The next step is what? Let's create our action and slices. So quickly, let's do it. Okay, so like I said, you can pause this video and try it by yourself too. So in implementation for registration, going to be the same thing, right? So inside redux slices, this time around we need what? Expenses slices. So let's create one file and call this one expenses slices.js. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to do the same thing for registration. So users, copy that on both sides. Okay, so first thing we need these three, the create async tag to create our action and create slice for our reducers, and we need access to make the HTTP request, and we need our API endpoint for base URL. So we need all these three. Copy that, come here and then paste. Okay, next one is going to be what? Our action to register. So here we can copy one of these actions, right? So let's copy the registration action. User registration, any of them. Okay, this one is here. So user registration, so let's copy that. It's going to be the same thing, and I'm going to explain the code. If you're not okay with that, paste it here. Okay, so here we need to name our action. Here is called create expense. I mean just expense action shortcut. Okay, so here I need to name my action type. So here is what? Expense. And make sure it be create. You can name it whatever you want, but it must be you need to have a meaning as the name of your action, right? So create and expense and create. Okay, and here we need this callback function. All right, and here definitely we need the payload. The payload are the title, the income and expenses, right? And you need this one for handling the errors, display errors nicely, and we can get a snapshot of our state, and we can use this one to dispatch our custom action. Okay, so here let's provide some. Here comes the logic, right? Remember that the when you are creating an action, you need to be logged in, right? So if you go to the API, the Postman, and then let me show you. We want to create an expense. Okay, this one. First of all, you need to log in. So we pass as what? The headers. So here for now, I haven't logged in yet. So when I try to create an expense, you see that there is no token attached, right? So how can we send? But here, if you try for the headers, let's add the authorization. So let me log in again. Users, log in here, and then let me log in. Okay, see, I got a token. So to be able to send the token along here, let's go ahead. Let's check the create one. And here I want to pass the header. Okay, so here provide authorization, and then bearer, and then paste the token. And this time around, let's try to create. Oh, still it says that there is no token attached to the header, right? So we have authorization here and bearer, but why is it saying that there is no token attached to the header? Okay, all right, so is our back end okay or not? So let's try to fix it. Oh, sorry, it's not this parent of bearer, right? It's sorry, my site. All right, so it's gonna be bearer, something like this. Okay, and send. You see, now I've sent the token along, so I'll be able to what? Create. So the same way in the front end, you need to send the token, right? So here comes the logic, right? So here, before you make the request, all right, you need to send the token. So how can we get the token from here? That is why the get state is really important here this time around. All right, because we already have sorry, the user log in, who has logged in, and if you have logged in, we have access to the token, right? So we need to get the user from the store and then take the token and pass as a header. So how can we get a user? So here, let's comment and say that get user token from store. All right, so from here, from store, const user here. Okay, for now let's make a user, and then let's call get state as a function. All right, cool, as a function. So get state, we have what? Dot users dot what? User of. Remember the way we did for on the front end to get a user. If you check the console, this one our state, we have what? We have users. So we're gonna be what? Here the function users dot users, and then we need what? User of, right? Dot user of. So dot user of dot token. All right, and we can console log that for you to see. So dot user of dot token. So let me call this one user token. Yes, so here I've got the user token from the store. So next, how can I pass as a header to this request? And it's going to be the same thing. So here, that's why I said that the config is really important. Now it's important to us. So apart from the headers, right, so we can add additional property called authorization to that, right? We can make what authorization to that. So let me show you how it's going to be, and it's going to be pretty easy to do, because right now we have the token here. So next step is what? The same headers, we need to pass one more property called authorization. Okay, authorization, yes. And this authorization, remember in Postman, how do you do it? We added bearer here and a token. So the same thing you need to add, right? So here, because I want to inject the token, I want to use template literal for dynamic value. So here, bearer and space, and inject the user token, and that is it. Okay, and the endpoint here is post, but it's not users, but it's what? Check it out. It's API users expenses. So let's change this one, API, and here we're gonna be users, expenses, users expenses. Okay, and definitely I need a payload to pass as second argument and my config, and that is it. So here I return back the data, and there's no error, there's some error, I need to handle that. Okay, so now our action is being done for creating an authenticated endpoint. So next step is that let's handle the slices. So as you can guess, we need to use what? Const expense slices is equal to create slice. Okay, cool. So for create slice, what do we need? First of all, let's scroll down here. We need the name and then initial state, right? So here, let's give our reducer or slice a name. So let's name here gonna be expenses. Okay, and next one gonna be what? My initial state. For now, it's an empty string, empty object. All right, and then the next one gonna be what? My extra reducers, right? And gonna be a function, and I'll call it as that. And for this value, for this argument here, we have access to what is called the builder, and we can build up our builder here. Okay, so inside the builder here, this function, then we can map the individual actions to our slices or reducers. Let me say it that way. So let's add the first case. So builder dot add case, right? For the add case, I'm going to use the create action, and you can guess we need create expense action. We need first of all pending. So pending, then we call our callback, and we have access to our state and action. And then here we can make changes to our state and add more values to our initial state. So on pending state dot load, let's add our own property called loading and say true. So the pending state, right? So let me comment here and say that create expense, because we're going to have multiple actions here. All right, so we have handled the pending state. The next one going to be the fulfill state, where I like it most. So add case, because you all want something to fulfill. All right, so create action dot fulfilled. All right, then I have my state and action, because I've done this one many times here. So like I said, if you are moving fast, you can slow me down. And if you're not okay with Redux toolkit, like I said, I have a playlist on that. You can go and watch as well to enhance your knowledge in this. Okay, so here, first of all, state the loading gonna be false. All right, and then let me add one more property called states dot here. Let me call this one expense created. Okay, and it's I can get the result from action dot payload, right? So action dot payload. like that. So I'm using chaining to avoid end operator. All right, so here at this point there will be no error, right? So state dot, like I said, we have two types of errors. I've explained this one extensively. So for the app error, meaning that maybe if the user refuses to provide a token, you want to get that one, right? So that one form, let's check how we did for the user slices. So we have both the for the app error is from where payload.message. So let's copy this one to make our life easier, right? So we want to add our property. So here let's add this one. Okay, so this time around I just want to make it more dynamic, more consistent. So I'll make use of app error. The app error simply means that if a user refuses to provide the provide the token or not login, try to access the endpoint, we give you, hey, you are not authenticated, or token is not provided, or token is expired. So the same thing applies for the error. So I'll make this one, make it just server error. You can make it wherever you want. Okay, so let me copy this one because I need it in the other one. So here on fulfilled, there is no error, so here gonna be the undefined. And on server error 2, on unfulfilled, there is no error, so it's going to be the undefined. So the last thing I need to handle going to be the rejected state, and you can guess the same process, builder dot add case, and the case is called create action, create expense action, and rejected, right? Rejected. Okay, cool. So on rejected, we have our state and action, and call back our function like this. And here state.loading is false, but here we have properties on the app error and state error. So app error is from where action.payload.message, and for the server error we get it from where action.error.message. So the last thing is what I need to create get my reducer from this one, because I have my action here. So the last thing is what? My reducer. So come down here and export this. So export default the expenses slices, and there we have what is called dot reducer, and that is it. So last thing is what? Let's add this state to our store. So let me come back to store here, and then let's require the slices for that. So import expenses reducer, can be anything, right? So dot slices dot expenses slices. So let me add property here and call this one expenses, and let me add the reducer to it called expense reducer. So for the expense reducer, let's add some initial state here. Okay, for now, empty array. Let me call this one for expense. Let's give empty array for now. I just want to show, okay, let me add something to it, just some properties to it. Let me say that expenses gonna be an array, and here gonna be just some number, some values, okay, to show you that our reducer has been connected to our store. Okay, so let's refresh the application. I have an error here. Oh, okay, so let's check our depth extension 2. Now for our state, we have one more property called expenses. We're going to keep track of all expenses here. As you can see, there we go. So the last thing is what? To dispatch this action. So let's copy this one, make sure the name is here, and let's go to where we are dispatching our form to dispatch that action. And remember, pages, expense, and add expense. Okay, so the same process, let's require the action auto import. Preferably I have it here. All right, so let's copy this one, the action, and then we need use dispatch to dispatch our action, right? So let's require that one too. and also need use selector. So let's go back to, let's make our life easier. Let's go back to users for the registration, and we have all of this one here. So we need use dispatch and use selector. Okay, so add expense, and let's bring it here, and then let's create an instance of use dispatch inside our form. So dispatch, all right, and then use dispatch. Okay, as that. Okay, so let's dispatch the action here. So let's call our dispatch and then pass in our create action, create expense, and let's pass in the values. So let's try to dispatch this action to create an expense, and I believe we are going to face an error. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so before you dispatch the action, first of all, look at this endpoint, the endpoint for creating. So let's look at the things it needs, right? The properties. First of all, it needs the title, description, and amount, and we can get this one from the model. So let's go back to the back end, okay, and server, and then let's go to model, and then expense. Remember, here we are requesting the user to provide title, description. The type is by default, don't need to pass in amount, and here user, and is what? A required field, right? So in the front end, we are passing all these details: type, the description, amount, with the exception of what? User. And this one, we need the user ID. But in Postman, as you can see here, we are what? When you are creating the expense, we are sending the user manually like this. So here we have two things. We have two ways of achieving this, how we can get the ID. One, we can get the ID of the user who has logged in from our store, right? So here inside the action, expense action here, when creating here, if you get the user here, we have the user of, and we have the token, and we can get the ID, and we can pass this one to the payload. All right, so where is it? This is the config. Okay, let me have some space here. Okay, you see that the payload here, this payload contains what? Contains the title, description, and then the amount, but there is no user what being attached here. So we can get the login user ID and pass as part of the payload to send, or we can go to the endpoint, the controller, the server here. For the server, where is my server? Listen, yes, expenses controller here. As you can see, we are also receiving the title, amount, description, and we are expecting the user to provide the user ID manually. And remember, since this one is a protected route, we have access to the login user, and we can manually append to this one without doing as manually, right? So you can guess, if you console log rec.user, remember we have access to the login user. Understand? Okay, so to be able to understand that, let's try to console.log the rec.user. So we have two ways of achieving this. So let's go to Postman and make the request. So send. Okay, it has been created. Let's go check our console, our terminal. There we go. You see that we have the login user ID, the rec.user. So here we can get the ID of the user, this one. So going to be the rec.user underscore ID, and you can do it from that. So that is the trick I'm going to use from the back end, not the front end. So here I'm not going to receive the user from here, but instead I'm going to get the user from the middleware. Okay, the login. So rec.user, and then let me check if there is, on the request there is a user, get that one, and then let's get the underscore ID. So with this, even from Postman, if we refuse to provide the user ID here, we still have it, right? We still have it. So let's check if it's gonna work this time around. So create, and it works, and I have the user automatically. So that's what we are going to do in here. So we don't need to pass additional. So let me close, it makes more clumsy here. So let's go to the add expense. I'm inside the clients. Let me close the server one to the server file. Okay, so clients, and then pages and expense, add expense. So now let's try our luck, because we are sending the user from the back end, so there's no need to send the user again. So now let's try our luck. Okay, cool. Let's make sure that your dev extension 2 is working. So open here. Now I have this default state. So first, let me call this one billing, because this is for billing. Let's call this one, let me say phone bill, and the amount's gonna be $300. So click on that. Moment of truth. Let's check it out. Create for failed, and there we go. We have expense created, and we have all these ones, right? So let's go back to the slide and remove this default state. I don't need it. I just showing you how to make sure that I have the reducer being what populated to my store. So let's remove that. So now the action is working. In the next video, let's work on the fetching all expenses and fetch a single expense, update and delete.